He wasn't just strong enough to break world records, he was strong enough to break friendships. In 2020, Haftor Bjornsson pulled a bar loaded with 501 kilograms off the ground, over 1,100 pounds, setting a new deadlift world record. But this wasn't just any record. It was a direct shot at his former friend and rival, Eddie Hall. And the tension didn't end there. Soon the two giants stepped into a boxing ring to settle their feud with fists instead of iron, in what was called the heaviest boxing match in history. Before the world knew him as the Mountain from Game of Thrones, before the Hollywood fame and social media empire, there was Haftor Julius Bjornsson, an Icelandic basketball player who transformed into Strongman's most controversial champion. Because this isn't just a story about lifting heavy things. It's a story about broken friendships, disputed records, and a rivalry that turned Strongman into a battlefield. This is how Iceland's gentle giant became the sport's most polarizing figure. Reykjavik, Iceland, November 26, 1988. In a land where winter darkness stretches for 19 hours and summer barely warms the skin, a baby boy is born. His name, Haftor Julius Bjornsson. He wasn't the Mountain yet. That title would come from Hollywood. He wasn't the world's strongest man either. That would come later, through blood, sweat, and controversy. Growing up in Iceland shaped Haftor in ways few outsiders understand. On this small island, where everyone knows everyone, loyalty runs deep, and so do rivalries. The harsh climate breeds toughness, but it also creates isolation. And when recognition comes from beyond the island's shores, it feels like an intoxicating escape. As a teenager, Haftor didn't dream of lifting stones or pulling trucks. He dreamed of slam dunks and three-pointers. At 6'9", basketball seemed like his destiny. Iceland's basketball scene was small but fiercely competitive, and Haftor towered over opponents on the court. But there was a problem. Iceland couldn't contain him. The facilities were limited, the competition was modest, and the chance to go professional, almost non-existent. For a young man with championship ambitions, basketball in Iceland was a ceiling, not a launching pad. Then, his body began to break down. Persistent ankle problems, surgeries, and pain ended his basketball dream before it could take flight. But in the ruins of one dream, another began to take shape. To stay strong for basketball, he lifted weights in the off-season, but soon, the gym became his true arena. He realized his strength wasn't just above average, it was freakish. Early sessions revealed arms like cranes, legs like pillars, and a grip that could crush stone. Local strongman legend Magnus Ver Magnusson saw his potential and invited him to train seriously for strongman competitions. He wasn't lifting to jump higher anymore. Now, he was lifting to see just how much a human body could handle. The first time he touched an Atlas stone, it felt like it belonged in his hands. His raw strength stunned veterans. But strongman wasn't just about brute force. It was about technique, endurance, and mental toughness. And Haftor was ready to learn. His training sessions quickly intensified. Day after day, he pushed his limits, deadlifting enormous weights, carrying stones that could crush bones, and flipping tires taller than himself. Each rep was a step away from basketball, and a step closer to becoming a strongman legend. But training was only part of the battle. To prove himself, he needed to step onto the competition floor. In 2010, Haftor placed second in Iceland's Strongest Man, earning a spot at World's Strongest Man the following year. At just 22 years old, he walked onto the WSM stage for the first time. Under the blazing sun, surrounded by the world's strongest giants, he looked like he belonged. His early performances showed flashes of future dominance. Events requiring raw lifting power came easily. But others, like loading medleys or carrying events, exposed weaknesses he needed to fix. Still, the strongman community was buzzing. Here was a giant from Iceland with size, strength, and growing skill. The question wasn't if he would become elite, it was how fast. By 2011, Haftor wasn't just another competitor, he was a rising threat. The basketball player was gone. In his place stood a young strongman with the size of a titan and a hunger to match. But nobody could predict what would come next. The early 2000s and 10s were strongman's golden age, a time when every champion was also a character. There was Eddie Hall with explosive power and unbreakable confidence, Brian Shaw with technical mastery and quiet dominance. And now, stepping into their world was Haftor Bjornsson, a towering Icelander with deadlifting strength that hinted he might rewrite the sport's hierarchy. His climb through Strongman's ranks was steady, but far from effortless. Each competition taught him hard lessons about mastering event techniques, handling the pressure of global television, and learning the tactics that separate champions from men who are merely strong. At his first World's Strongest Man in 2011, he wasn't yet the dominant force he'd become. But even then, the world saw potential in the young giant from Iceland. His deadlift strength translated well, and his sheer size gave him an edge in loading and carrying events. But there were weaknesses too. Endurance and technical skills needed work. The strongman community began to take notice. This wasn't just another tall man with decent lifts. Haftor had the rare combination of size, raw power, and a competitive mind, traits that define true champions. In 2014, his breakthrough arrived. Haftor claimed his first major title, Europe's Strongest Man, and it wasn't just a win, it was dominance. He crushed deadlift events with ease and showed improving technique in moving and loading challenges. His victory sent a message. Strongman had found its newest contender. From that point, his competitions became highlight reels. Repeated victories, record-breaking lifts, and performances that left even veterans stunned. Each event revealed a man evolving, from raw strength to refined champion. But success brings scrutiny, and scrutiny reveals everything, the good and the bad. Haftor was confident without arrogance when he won. But when he lost, graciousness didn't always come easily. Seeds of future conflicts were being planted. Then came 2017. For Haftor, it should have been his coronation. He led the world's strongest man through multiple events, performing like a champion in waiting. But in the final event, the Viking press, disaster struck. The event, which should have favored his powerful pressing, turned controversial. Disputed judging calls and technical difficulties cost him vital reps. In the end, Eddie Hall won by a single point. Haftor wasn't quiet about it. He claimed the judging was unfair, the setup flawed. His words revealed a side of him the public hadn't fully seen. Not the silent giant, but a competitor unafraid to question decisions, even if it risked his image. The following year, he returned with vengeance. 2018 was his redemption arc. Every lift, every event, showed focus sharper than steel. When he finally claimed the World's Strongest Man title, it wasn't just a victory, it was validation. In his victory speech, his satisfaction was clear, but so was his lingering resentment. Champion at last, but still carrying the weight of unfinished business. Because for Haftor, being World's Strongest Man was just the beginning. What came next would divide the strongman world and end a friendship forever. May 2nd, 2020. The world was in lockdown, competitions canceled, gyms closed, but inside Thor's power gym in Reykjavik, Iceland, history was about to be made, and a friendship was about to die. Haftor Bjornsson stepped up to the bar, loaded with 501 kilograms, over 1,100 pounds, and pulled it from the ground, the heaviest deadlift ever recorded. But this wasn't just about breaking a number, this was about breaking Eddie Hall's legacy. For 4 years, Eddie Hall's 500-kilogram deadlift stood untouched. It wasn't just a record, it was the record, the lift that nearly killed him, the moment that defined his career. He believed it would stand forever. Then Thor announced he would attempt 501 kilograms, just 1 kilogram heavier, in his own gym, with his own team, under his own conditions, though officially sanctioned by World's Ultimate Strongman. The strongman world split instantly. Thor's supporters saw a world record, no matter where it happened. Hall's camp called it illegitimate, claiming gym lifts could never match competition lifts under neutral judging. Eddie Hall refused to accept it. He questioned the weights, the calibration, the judging, everything. What should have been Thor's greatest moment became the spark that lit Strongman's most bitter feud. Hall's response was immediate and personal. He didn't just question the record, he questioned Thor himself. Accusations flew, shortcuts, easy conditions, unearned glory. The friendship they had built through years of competition evaporated overnight. Thor's reply was equally brutal. If Eddie wanted to settle this, why not do it in a boxing ring? The challenge came soon after the deadlift, not as a celebration, but as a declaration of war. What started as a disagreement over a lift became something far more personal. Social media attacks, public insults, a feud that spilled out of Strongman and into the mainstream. The announcement shook the sports world. Two of the world's strongest men would settle their differences not with barbells, but with boxing gloves. News outlets covered it like a heavyweight title fight. Celebrity reactions poured in. Betting sites set odds as if it were a championship bout. But before they could fight, they had to become fighters. The transformation was brutal. Haftor and Eddie, men who had spent their lives building mass and power, now needed speed, endurance, and technique. Training camps turned into reality shows. Fans watched as the giants lost weight, learned footwork, and threw awkward punches that slowly gained precision. Massive deadlifts were replaced by sparring sessions. Truck pulls gave way to bag work. Every day was a battle against their own bodies, reshaping muscles built for strength into tools for combat. Neither man backed down. The stage was set. The world was watching. Two titans, one ring, and a rivalry bigger than Strongman itself. What happened next would shock everyone. March 19, 2022, Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Stadium. The heaviest boxing match in history. A tagline that captured both the spectacle and the absurdity of what was about to unfold. Two men who had spent their lives lifting the heaviest objects on Earth were about to try to knock each other out. For 2 years, they traded insults, accusations, and threats. Now, the trash talk was over. Only fists would speak. The weigh-ins revealed how seriously they had prepared. Thor walked in, trimmed down from his strongman peak, but still towering, radiating calm confidence. Hall stood opposite, intense as ever, looking like a coiled spring ready to explode. Fight night arrived, and the atmosphere was electric in ways strongman competitions rarely achieve. International media, celebrity guests, millions watching streams around the world. This wasn't just a grudge match, it was a global event. When the opening bell rang, the world saw something unexpected. Not a sloppy brawl, but real boxing technique from two giants. Every punch carried the power of men who once lifted cars and flipped giant tires. Early in the fight, Hall sent Thor to the canvas, shocking the crowd. For a moment, it looked like the underdog might pull off the impossible, but Thor's size and reach were too much. As the rounds went on, his jabs landed cleaner, his footwork steadier. Hall swung with wild power, but Thor's discipline kept him ahead. The final rounds felt inevitable. The decision was unanimous, victory for Thor. But the fight's real legacy was respect. They had proved that strongmen could adapt, train like real fighters, and entertain the world. After the final bell, the rivals embraced. Words of respect replaced years of insults. For a moment, it seemed their feud was over. But some wounds cut too deep for forgiveness. Behind the public respect, their friendship remained broken. The bond forged through years of lifting together had been shattered by one lift and one fight. Analysts later called the match a disaster commercially. Pay-per-view sales were lower than expected. But as a spectacle, it achieved something unprecedented. It brought strongman drama to an audience that had never watched a deadlift or an Atlas stone before. For Thor and Eddie, the boxing match was an ending, not a beginning. They settled their score. But the cost was a friendship that could never be repaired. The 501-kilogram deadlift had broken more than just a record. It had broken trust. It had broken a bond. The strongest men in the world had learned how to fight, but they never learned how to forgive. Hollywood made Haftor Bjornsson famous as the Mountain in Game of Thrones. But his story was always more complex than a single character. His strongman career and boxing journey built a legacy that was equal parts champion and controversy. The numbers speak for themselves. 2018 World's Strongest Man Champion, multiple Europe's Strongest Man titles, and a deadlift record that redefined human possibility. But numbers alone can't tell his story. When he won World's Strongest Man in 2018, it should have been pure celebration. Years of preparation had led to a dominant victory that left no doubt about his place among the strongest men in history. But shadows still lingered. The controversy of 2017, whispers about judging, and growing tension with Eddie Hall that soon exploded into public feud. Even in triumph, Haftor carried the burden of proving himself again and again. Then came the 501-kilogram deadlift in 2020, his greatest lift and his most divisive. It broke barriers and broke friendships. It made him famous and made him infamous. His role as the Mountain gave him global recognition. From strongman platforms to Hollywood sets, he became a face known far beyond lifting fans. But with fame came critics. Some said he cared more about celebrity than strength, that he chased social media clout over pure competition. Then came the boxing match. For Haftor, it was proof his competitive fire still burned. The training, the sacrifice, the fight itself. He showed the world he wasn't just a lifter or an actor. He was a fighter. Today, Haftor remains one of the world's strongest men. His lifts are still legendary, but his legacy is more complicated than iron plates and records. Some fans see a champion who pushed strongman into the mainstream, a man who proved giants could become global stars. Others see a figure who traded purity for publicity, strength for spectacle. The 501-kilogram deadlift remains a point of division. Official organizations recognize it. But many in the strongman community argue Eddie Hall's competition lift remains unmatched. No matter where opinions fall, his influence is undeniable. The boxing match, the Hollywood fame, the social media presence. Haftor showed that strongmen could become something more: entertainers, celebrities, global icons. But at what cost? Some say he diluted strongman's competitive spirit, turning lifts into entertainment. Others see his journey as proof of what's possible when an athlete refuses to stay in one lane. And then there's Eddie Hall, the friend who became a rival, the man whose relationship with Haftor defined an era and ended in bitterness neither could resolve. Haftor Bjornsson's legacy is secure, but it remains complicated. Champion and controversy, record breaker and rule breaker, the Mountain who moved the world, but couldn't move past the feud that defined his career. Today, Haftor Julius Bjornsson's name stands among the most impactful athletes in strongman history. His 2018 World's Strongest Man victory proved his strength to the world, but his influence goes far beyond titles. He transformed strongman from a niche sport into global entertainment. The 501-kilogram deadlift remains his greatest triumph and his most controversial. A lift that redefined what humans could do, while dividing the strongman community between believers and skeptics. His journey from basketball player to strongman champion, from Hollywood actor to boxer, showed an adaptability few athletes ever possess. Each transformation required him to master new skills, accept new challenges, and reinvent himself again and again. His feud with Eddie Hall, though it destroyed their friendship, created the most compelling storyline strongman has ever seen. Their rivalry brought millions of new eyes to the sport, proving that personality-driven drama could captivate far beyond the world of barbells. The 2022 boxing match set a new blueprint. Strength athletes could become fighters, entertainers, celebrities. Their fight showed that strongmen could command arenas usually reserved for boxing legends. His role as the Mountain in Game of Thrones made him a global icon. People who had never seen an Atlas stone now knew his face. In his own way, he became strongman's ambassador to the world. But his legacy is complicated. Critics say he chased fame over pure competition, that he prioritized branding over brotherhood. Supporters see a visionary who proved strongmen could break records and become global stars. The friendship with Eddie Hall remains broken, a reminder that the cost of greatness can sometimes be relationships that no championship can replace. Modern strongman stars follow the template he created, combining competitive excellence with social media power and entertainment appeal. Haftor showed them it could be done. His records continue to inspire new generations. Lifts once thought impossible are now goals to be broken. Because if Haftor proved anything, it's that barriers exist to be shattered. He was the champion who broke records and broke friendships. The Mountain who moved the world and divided a sport. The athlete whose greatest victories carried shadows of bitter controversy. From Iceland's quiet basketball courts to the roaring strongman arenas, from the deadlift platforms where he made history to the boxing ring where he settled scores. Haftor Julius Bjornsson's journey shows both the possibilities and the perils of modern athletic fame. In strongman circles, debates about the sport's greatest champions always include his name, not just for what he achieved, but for how he achieved it, and what it meant for the future of strongman. The mountain, the champion, the controversy, the man who proved the strongest humans on Earth can learn to fight, but can't always learn to forgive. Haftor Julius Bjornsson.